Hi, everybody. This is Esmeralda Teresa Hernandez Polanco. Somebody asked me to read some of my work. So, when I was at North Central University, which merged with National University, I did some immigration research, especially on, just the physical and psychological effects of pre and post trauma, because it could be a very traumatic journey to come to the other country and just the what people usually experience. And I titled this research, it was for one of my courses, Psych 7102, and it was my signature paper. And so I'm going to make this part one, because then what I did is I also wrote a proposal for my possible research, which would be part two. And it talks a little bit about laws and ethics in doing research in psychology, especially when you work with human subjects. So I did pass a certification that's good for 3 years of working with human subjects. And I had proposed about doing research in detainment centers for immigration. But let me go ahead and just read a little bit about the research that I did. Okay, let me start. Traumatic Migration by Esmeralda Teresa Hernandez Polanco, School of Social and Behavioral Sciences, North Central University, Psych 7102, Scholarly Writing and Professional Communication in Psychology, Professor Alicia Harris, June 4th, 2022. I no longer attend the school because they merged with National University and their merger didn't go well. I would love to finish my research. I would love to I think just finish my degree, my third degree in my PhD, since I already have my master's, just because the research is so important to me. My research is important. I think it's important for what's happening for immigration reform laws, things that would work better. And I do propose some of that in my research. So here goes my 2 cents based on my research. Traumatic migration. Migration has been happening for centuries, and it will continue to happen due to limited resources, war, violence, and the pursuance of a better life. Traumatic immigration and refugee experiences cause negative health effects. Knowledge and awareness regarding the physical and psychological implications could help in developing better healthcare and political policies. Oh, am I even recording? Oh, yeah, I am. So sorry. Making sure I didn't stop recording here. Okay, here we are. Knowledge and awareness regarding the physical and psychological implications could help in developing better healthcare and political policies. In developing better healthcare policies, society may be able to develop culturally sensitive interventions and apply them in clinical practice. In understanding the psychological, and I'll tell you who I cited, Anna Wenze and Rasmussen, 2021, Kim et al., 2019, Mercado et al., 2021, Tumala Nara, 2014. In understanding the psychological and physical effects of traumatic migration, society may be able to develop humane and cost-effective immigration policies. In discussing traumatic migration, cultural awareness may assist in decreasing discrimination and prejudice that cause extreme anti-immigration views. Refugee versus immigrant experiences. Refugees and immigrants experience traumatic events due to migration and have been treated the same when developing resources, policies, and programs to assist them. However, they experience different levels of psychological stress. Refugees flee their countries due to oppressive governments, war, and violence. Kim et al. 2019. They do not have a choice and flee to seek safety and political asylum. Immigrants move and may have a plan before arrival. They may already know a relative or friend that can help them. Therefore, refugees show a higher level of distress than immigrants. Kim et al. 2019. Refugees also reported more physical health problems, more racial discrimination, and more pre-migration and post-migration trauma. Kim et al. 2019, Mercado et al. 2021. Refugees who are older in age may have less of an ability to assimilate to a new country, and this increases their psychological distress. It causes a disruption in their social roles and the stability that they knew before leaving their country of origin. Refugees tend to be resettled in poor cities with fewer resources, unsafe conditions, high criminal rates, and may exhibit greater social problems. Kim et al. 2019. Immigration policies and detention. Sanchez and Williams, 2020, conducted research to understand if beneficial immigration policies would reverse the effects of punitive policies. During a time of high immigration sentiments and budget decline, data was utilized from the National Conference of State Legislatives from 2005 to 2010 to research beneficial immigration laws across 50 states. Sanchez and Williams, 2020. Sanchez and Williams, 2020, concluded that beneficial immigration laws do not undo the effects of harsh immigration policies. Each state reacts based on their own state demographics and immigrant population size. This will determine which state is able to develop better immigration policies that are the most beneficial. With the zero tolerance policy, individuals or families were immediately prosecuted and separated when they arrived in the United States illegally. Mattingly et al., 2020. Anti-immigration sentiments, along with harsh immigration policies, can cause trauma, negative health effects, and be less cost-effective. Garcini et al., 2022. Chirco and Buchanan, 2021, measured if people in society categorize people as immigrants due to their skin color and if it is linked between their support for strict or harsh immigration policies. The results showed that people with brown and black skin tend to be stereotyped and seen as undocumented immigrants, and their sentiments were linked to stricter immigration policies. Chirco and Buchanan, 2021. People with brown skin were more likely to be seen as non citizens and experienced more discrimination and encountered more policies that restricted their freedoms. Vietnamese refugees who were older experienced more racial discrimination because they are least likely to assimilate due to language barriers and loyalty to their country of origin. Therefore, they experience more discrimination. Kim et al., 2019. They tend to receive a poor quality of service due to language limitations and limited resources. Refugees who were older in age also self reported more pre migration and post migration trauma because they have difficulty acclimating to a new country. I'll tell you my resources at the end instead of kind of reading every site. But Tumala Nara, 2014, explained that racial trauma has not yet been included in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders as part of a post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD) criteria, and it is a traumatic aspect that affects the immigrant and refugee populations. Further research in racial trauma could assist in developing better interventions in clinical practice. The immigration detention policies cause trauma and negative health effects in refugees and immigrants. There are three types of detentions. No detention is when families are released with a notice to appear in court. Family detention is when families are detained together, and zero tolerance detention is when children are separated from their parents and the adults are 100% prosecuted. The zero tolerance policy increased trauma exposure. Child impaired separation and increased the cost to the healthcare system to treat the immigrants that were harmed, killed in detention facilities, and needed mental and physical health care after detention. Mattingly et al., 2020. These traumatic experiences increased anxiety, sleep disorder, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder in children when comparing refugee children, immigrant children, and U.S.-born children. Unnecessary removal of children from their parents greatly impacted their overall mental and physical health. Furthermore, the results of zero tolerance detention increased emotional and behavioral problems in children. Children experience an increase in PTSD when they are separated from their mothers. Childhood trauma exposure may result in alcoholism, attempted suicide, sleep disorders, sexually transmitted diseases, drug use, and an overall high mortality rate. Mattingly et al., 2020. Understanding childhood adversity and stress experienced by the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals DACA recipients will assist in understanding that it affects a decrease in health and an increase of PTSD and stress-related disorders. Garcini et al., 2020. People who receive DACA are experiencing trauma and distress about the program ending in a 2-year work visa for immigrants who arrived as children. Per the Latinx Immigrant Health Alliance, 2021, there has been an increase in distress across the 2 immigrant samples who received DACA during the election season. Garcini et al., 2020. Immigrant children who grow up in the United States are not recognized as citizens. and they are asked to leave the country and their entire lives. They live in fear of deportation and separation from their families. Moreno 2021 stated that DACA recipients show anxiety, stress, and fear. Garcini et al. 2020. Anxiety will increase as the immigrants who receive DACA will not know when their protected status will end. Give me a second. I want to make sure I'm still recording. I am. Sometimes I accidentally push the button when I'm reading. Physical and psychological effects of migration. Migration affects education opportunities, social status, language, and employment opportunities that cause psychological distress. Venta en Mercado, 2018, stated the traumatic effects have serious effects on the body and serious consequences on mental and physical health. There's an increase in systemic inflammation after trauma, an increase in post traumatic symptoms, and an increase in medical morbidity. Post traumatic symptoms. There's a significant effect of post traumatic symptoms on health for parents and children when they are separated due to immigration. Mercado et al. 2021. Kibler et al. 2009 and Eisman et al. 2008 stated that post traumatic symptoms are directly related to cholesterol problems, cardiovascular disease, increased somaticized symptoms, and obesity. Mercado et al. 2020. An increase in cultural values buffered chronic fatigues, even with a high level of post traumatic symptoms, PTS present. An increase in familismo showed a decrease in self reported fatigue. Latinos who practice familismo will pay attention to family obligations before PTS. PTS is post traumatic symptoms. A decrease in post traumatic symptoms with an increase in cultural values reported a decrease in emotional well being. Let me actually pause there and talk about that. Somebody said it best that her mother didn't have time for depression. She's like, I don't have time for depression. I'm a Latina mother. We function, we do what we gotta do. And there's so much truth of that in our culture. It's like, tenemos que trabajar, tenemos que mantener la familia, we need to work, we need to provide for family. So in the Latino culture, going into depression or being depressed, there's sort of a negative connotation with it. There's a stigma of, oh, es que está loca. And no, you're not crazy. It's maybe you're going through a hard time. You're suffering from PTSD. But the truth of the matter is that's how a lot of Latina women see things. It's, I don't have time to be depressed. I need to take care of my kids. I need to work for my family. I need to do, because the basic needs take precedence over the emotional and mental health. Anna Coense and Rasmussen 2021 mentioned how trauma distress can affect a child's health from the Stein and Herald 2005 study, and included that parent post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, can lead to harsh, overprotective, and role-reversing styles of parenting. This effect of parenting styles can cause hyperactivity, conduct problems, interpersonal problems, and emotional problems. This study concluded that children whose immigrant parents have trauma are at risk of showing behaviors and symptoms of trauma. Immigrant parents with PTSD show a relationship with behavioral symptoms in West African immigrant children. The results further showed that children of West African immigrant parents with PTSD may also experience psychological effects. Trauma may result in a poor ability for the parent to respond to child behaviors. Intergenerational trauma. Traumatic history can be passed down from generation to generation, to society, or to the individual. Emotional distress is exhibited when trauma is not in the conscious mind, and therefore emotions cannot be processed. Bradley 2020. Sigmund Freud explained that resistance and repression are responsible for the survival of trauma victims, and this could cause a gap in the memory. Intergenerational trauma, IG, was studied with a collective literature review to determine and examine mass trauma and how it impacts generations. Tumala Nara 2014 conducted a case study over a course of 3 years, with psychoanalytic therapy sessions being conducted once a week. She found that discrimination, language acculturation, loss of culture, and separation from family can all affect someone's identity formation. Acculturation can cause intergenerational conflict, causing relationship conflict between parent and child. The development of cultural identity is influenced by interpersonal and social cultural factors, and they are related because they both offer intrapsychic explanations. Immigrants can be empowered and disempowered by migration, and they may feel a sense of disconnection from others, making it difficult to build relationships. Clinical implications. It's important for psychoanalysis to help the individual with individual, interpersonal, and social cultural issues because it provides deeper knowledge of how cultural identification can change and transform over time. There is the ability to see the self as a whole person when psychoanalysis is used because trauma due to migration can cause split off aspects of the self. Transference and countertransference can help with psychotherapy for trauma immigrants. It's important for therapists to self examine their own social and cultural identity. Let me pause for a second because if you didn't work in the field, I was a mental health therapist for 6 years. Transference and countertransference is sort of putting what we feel onto another person. It's like we're transferring that feeling, or I don't want to say like blame, but it's almost when we're triggered by each other. So it's either the therapist is sort of identifying with what the client is going to, and it's sort of affecting their work as a therapist, and vice versa. Maybe we're triggering each other. Like I might be triggered by something that they said, and so I'm experiencing some of that, and it might change how I react to it. So you have to kind of check yourself so that you're not being biased, and then vice versa. um, you might remind them of their sister, and so they might have transfer some of that onto you, and it just really depends on how they interact with you or whether you're triggering them also. And so transference and countertransference is when we the way we stop that is by checking in with ourselves of how am I reacting to this person? Am I being triggered by this person? Am I aligning with this person? What's happening? Because in a therapeutic setting you need to remain neutral, and you can't kind of play some of your own background onto another person. You don't want to do that. So you want to, or impose your views, I should say. You don't want to impose your views onto another person, especially when you're the therapist. Let's say someone says, "Oh, do you think abortion is wrong?" And then let's say I think the abortion is wrong, but I'm working with a client that is going to have an abortion. I can't give them my 2 cents. I can provide educational pamphlets of, there's all these ways of handling the situation. Maybe you can give the baby up for adoption if you don't want it. Maybe there's, other methods. But I, as a therapist, am not allowed to put my own personal beliefs into the session because then I'm imposing my own values onto another person. Sometimes churches do that if they're Christian counselors and it's sort of a different category, but that's how I was trained. We have to be very neutral. It has to be a very safe setting where they don't feel judged, and where they can come talk to you about anything that they need to talk to you about. So let me continue. It's important for therapists to self examine their own social and cultural identity. The study could assist in developing supportive programs and policies. It will help social workers and healthcare workers to offer support and assess for parent-child trauma transference. Clinicians need to assess and have these conversations with parents about how their mental health can affect a child's mental health. Mental health services can be beneficial for both parent and child. Therapy can help others survive being victimized to explore pre-migration and post-migration trauma, as these experiences are tied to a sense of belonging. Psychoanalysis can help join split self-representations for a person to have meaningful relationships again. Vietnamese Americans do not frequently use mental health services due to lack of culturally appropriate services, stigma, and language barriers. He concluded that there needs to be a better psychological screening in healthcare with Vietnamese refugees and immigrants, emphasizing on discrimination and trauma. Educational implications. For years, genocide of the indigenous population has been overlooked, and it has not been included in classroom text materials. Education can help us to understand history and the history of trauma. A teacher's effort to increase the emotional environment and culture in the classroom can help change connections of emotion in people through poetry, novels, art, drama, and music. Music that shares trauma history can show survivors that they're not alone in their trauma. A teaching philosophy that makes trauma aware helps students to recognize that we all share a connected and painful history. Acknowledging our trauma does not mean we know the future. Genocides and traumatic events can happen again, but we can acknowledge that trauma is a shared experience through history and culture. Narratives of intergenerational trauma can be used to teach and understand the effects of intergenerational trauma. Policy reformation. This is exactly why I wanted to do this research. In therapy, here's the thing: it's I'm interested in two aspects of immigration research. I'm interested in its clinical implications. How can we have better programs, mental health programs, and clinical interventions that will help, each refugee and immigrant population, because we do have to be culturally sensitive. But then there's also the administrative part of me that wants to do my research and apply it to policy reformation. Technically, in a psychology program, I can't apply it too much into policy reformation. It could just be an implication of what I would love my research to do. But let's say I do graduate with this type of degree and do my immigration work, then maybe I can go into immigration reform. So, policy reformation. Skin color plays a role in criminalizing people, and it may result in harassment, wrongful death, and microaggressions by civilians or the police. Regardless of citizenship, people of color are more likely to be categorized as non citizens and become targets of hate crimes. Understanding this will help save lives and promote equality. Ethical and responsible research methods need to be conducted based on worldviews and different cultures. A no detention comparison showed that 1.8 million to 18.6 million more were spent with the family detention policy, and 3.6 million to 36.4 million more were spent for the zero tolerance policy. Therefore, the no detention policy is more cost effective, and it will assist in decreasing trauma and decreasing long term health effects in immigrants and refugees. Conclusion. So I'm pro no detention, obviously. What I learned when I worked with Jesus La Rosa. He was an immigration lawyer. I worked with him for a few months. I learned that, you know some people who come here to the United States and they're stopped at the border, if they ask for political asylum, they will give you a court date, and they will pretty much let you temporarily stay legally, but you have to show up to your court date, and you have to explain why you need the political asylum, and there has to, the judge has to approve for you to stay here and receive some sort of resources. Now, there's something called the humanitarian parole. Now, I think it's where, if you have a family member here in the United States who can prove that they can financially provide for you if you come here, they can apply for you and then sponsor you. So they become your sponsor, and then you can come here in a more legal way. The only thing is that it's not applied to for all countries, and I think it should. It is a little bit geared more for, I think, refugee type of countries, but I think it would be really beautiful if they could do that for all countries. Conclusion. Racism separates people, limits how we can help towards social justice, and limits the development of supportive policies. When we are aware of discrimination, we're more likely to avoid behaviors that are biased, and it may change people's views before they vote for harsh policy reforms. Knowledge and awareness regarding the physical and psychological implications of trauma could help in developing better healthcare and political policies. In developing better healthcare policies, we may be able to develop culturally sensitive interventions and apply them in clinical practice. In understanding the psychological and physical effects of traumatic migration, we may be able to develop humane and cost effective immigration policies in discussing traumatic migration. Cultural awareness may assist in decreasing discrimination and prejudice that cause extreme anti immigration views. And I do have my references. So what I'll do is, when I just post the video, I'll just post my references in that little segment that says, "Oh, what's your video about?" That way I don't have to sit here and read everything. but I'll slowly just at least give you the authoring year. Anacoense and Rasmussen 2021, Bradley 2020, Chirco and Buchanan 2021, Chu and Buchanan 2021, Garcini, um, Rodriguez, Mercado, Silva, Cadenas, Galvan, and Paris 2020, Kim, Keyovisai, Kim again, Richards Desai, Yalim 2019. There's Madeline Kizer, Hill, Briggs, Trunzo, Safari, Betancourt 2020, Mercado, Venta, Henderson, and Pimentel 2021, Sanchez and Williams 2020, Tumala Nera 2014. Oh, I didn't know that I had written a reflection at the end of this. I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. I guess my instructor asked me to write a reflection about how I felt about the course or my doctoral journey so far. So I'm going to read it to you. I didn't even know I had that in there. So my reflection about my work, I said, I'm enjoying my doctoral journey so far. Sorry. I'm enjoying my doctoral journey so far, even if I'm only in the second course. I've always had a passion for writing and reading, and I'm looking forward to becoming a scholarly writer. My professors can see that I have passion and a great interest in my topic regarding the traumatic effects of migration. When I was a mental health therapist as an MFT intern, I became trauma focused cognitive behavior therapy certified. Trauma is my interest, and now I'm incorporating immigration law to my research. I will continue to utilize the book that was part of the course to continue growing in my writing skills. This course has been a great experience in preparing me for my dissertation writing and topic. My professor has really helped me to see my strength as a writer and where I need to grow and learn as a writer. My professor mentioned that I'm a clear writer and that I have strong grammar and writing skills. She further explained that I have good transitions in tying my literature review together. I need to work on narrowing my thoughts as a writer because there's so much to read and learn when it comes to trauma and immigration. I need to further fine tune my APA skills as that is something that is always changing. There's so much detail when it comes to writing in APA format, and as I continue to write, I'm sure that I will remember a lot of these skills. These past two writing courses have really helped me in remembering what it is like to write in psychology. I have not researched and written research papers like this since 2010 when I finished writing my thesis. I really appreciated my instructor's feedback because she is so knowledgeable in this field and in psychological writing. My discussions regarding my research and paper with my professor were invaluable and will set the pace for my doctoral experience. I absolutely love and enjoy reading about my topic because as a student, I want to have those aha moments. That is why I'm in school again at the age of 39. So I was 39 when I started my doctoral journey. It's never too late to learn and to grow. Those aha moments are the moments that make you use your brain cells. They help you to think outside the box and explore new possibilities. Having those aha moments where you just learn something new, and it is brilliant and inspiring, and it's what I thrive on. It feels like little light bulbs go off in my head and strings are attaching to new thoughts and they just keep growing. This is exactly why my instructor needed to help me narrow my thoughts down and to be more selective. To further enhance my writing skills, I'm going to continue utilizing the Academic Resource Center. I have access to writing tutorials and access to APA style templates and tutorials. North Central University offers workshops and webinars that I can attend. I know that the Academic Resource Center has Grammarly, but my first professor said that I do not need to use Grammarly because she felt like my grammar was good enough. The Academic Resource Center also offers editing, proofreading services, academic writer, and research writing and tools. I will make an appointment with a staff member at the Academic Resource Center, just like I met with the librarian, so that I can further learn about all the writing tools that they have available. Overall, I think I'm a good writer, but being a good writer is not enough. I will further fine tune my writing by utilizing all my writing resources and by speaking to my professors regarding my writing skills and reviewing their feedback. I will make sure to use that feedback in my future writing to the best of my ability. I know that hearing the feedback and applying feedback are two different things. I practice applying what I learn, and that is what is important. That's it. That's a little bit of my immigration work, and that's just part one. I'll read part two which is the proposal of how I would want to do my research in the field, possibly at detention centers or detainment camps. Um, I've been thinking, as of recently, that I want to reapply to finish, and it's more so because I not only do I owe it to myself to finish my research, I owe it to society, I owe it to the people, I owe it to, immigration reform laws, I owe it to the greater good, and me being a mother who has been separated from my children in the most horrific way when I was never supposed to. I know how traumatic it is to separate families, and how that's just not the best policy. And I hope that instead of detaining people, we can really use some of that money that's being used in these inhumane detainment facilities into maybe temporary housing, and figuring out how can we help. And I would like to propose something else. I was thinking today, I've always been very frugal with how I use my money, and I think it's because I'm a single mom. But more so, when I cook in a very economical way. And it's, donde comen uno, comen todos. So I would like to propose that we create a form. And right now that I'm not working, I'm using CalFresh, right? I get CalFresh. I get food benefits. Well, what if I chose to willingly donate $200 of my food benefits to an immigrant or refugee family? I think that would be a beautiful thing, because I know that I can live off of less if I cook in a more family minded way, which I do. I'm used to my grandma cooking for so many people. So it's, or when my grandma was alive. And I sort of do the same thing when I cook. I cook in a way to feed a family, and I'm by myself right now because my girls aren't with me. So I would like to propose this, that if you want to help a refugee family, let's sign a petition and say, if you are somebody who would like to donate, maybe it doesn't have to be $200. It could be $50 from my state benefits to a refugee family. It could be $100. It could be however much you feel you can give. Let's give. Let's put it in a pot, and let's help our refugee and immigrant families, because you never know one day when they might be the one saving your lives. Have a good day.